Welcome to Acton in Focus. I'm Vivian Kopsinje-Birchall, your host, and I'm excited to host three passionate activists or environmental activists from our town of Acton, who I'm going to invite to introduce themselves and tell us why they're here today. Starting with Mr. Jim Snyder-Graham.
Hi, how are you doing, Vivian? It's great to be here. My name's, as you say, Jim Snyder-Grant. I'm on the Acton Select Board, but today I'm here because I'm one of Acton's 8 energy coaches.
Hi, Vivian. It's good to be back. I'm Andrea Becerra. I'm the Sustainability Director for the town of Acton, and I support the coaches as a town staff member, and then I also work closely with the volunteers who also support the program.
Thank you for having us, Vivian. I'm David Martin, also on the Select Board, and also for this discussion, an energy coach in Acton, a volunteer energy coach.
Well, first of all, thank you again for being here to talk about coaching. To kick us off, I guess I'll ask, what is this coaching program? Anybody want to start?
I'll start because I think the coaches will have a lot to say about being coaches and probably will fill in a lot of the gaps that I missed. But the coaching program, it was really set up as a way to support residents who have any questions about installing solar, about EVs, about heat pumps, switching from natural gas or oil heating to electric heating, and then also add cooling if they don't have cooling already in their home, and basically cover the whole gamut of questions that people might have when it comes to wanting to have a net zero home and live a net zero carbon emissions life. So the coaches are there to help residents answer pretty much any question they might have. And if they don't know the answer, they try to figure it out.
I'm just curious, what inspired its creation? And before I get into the specifics of what the coaches do, why is it important to have this program in the town of Acton?
Yeah, so it really comes from the Climate Action Plan. The town of Acton passed or developed a climate action plan in response to climate emergency declaration, which called for net zero as quickly as possible with a target date of 2030, and that set the target for the town itself. But residents themselves are also very excited to be a part of the climate action work in town and be carbon free in their lives as well. And residents have the ability to do that by switching from fossil fuel heating and cooling to electric heating and cooling. And in addition to many other things like installing solar, adding EVs to switching out their gas-powered vehicle for an EV. But oftentimes it's not, it's easier said than done, and so coaches are there as a resource, as trained volunteers, to help residents through the process. And I'm sure Jim and David might want to add more to that.
Well, sure. In understanding, the Acton wants to reduce its emissions of greenhouse gases which cause climate change. And when we studied where the emissions were coming from in Acton, almost 40% of the emissions in Acton are coming from buildings. So we needed to understand how can we work with our 8,000 buildings and their owners to help each of them understand what they can do to reduce their fossil fuel use. And that's where the idea of the energy coaches came in, because each house is different.
Many people in town are interested in making their houses net zero or carbon free, but it's very difficult to know where to start. As Jim and Andrea were saying, every home is different. So the coaching program can help people get started, get ideas of how they can proceed, and then help them through the process.
Which brings me to the next question. You just hit on it a little bit because you said people don't know where to start. When we talk about electrifying things and clean energy and carbon emissions, often some members of our community think it's very elitist or it's very far out of reach. Because not because it actually is, but because the terminology is new. So maybe then I'll dig into the coaching program. How does that help many the residents who fall in this category? And I might be one of them, maybe.
Yeah. So I think we're at a very special point in technology and in policy where now it is less expensive to operate a house with modern electric heating. So there are people paying really large oil bills or heating with propane, and switching to electricity is a way for them to save money. So we think because of the technology has gotten better and because the rebates and incentives have gotten better, this is the time for people to be considering switching. And at the same time, even if you want to switch, it's hard to know where to start. So that's where the coaches come in.
All right, you want to?
Yeah, and it's true that the terminology is different, and so people are, that's where the coaches can come in. But really, it's not all that complicated. A heat pump is just like an air conditioner, but it operates in both ways. It can take heat out of your house or bring heat into your house, They're pretty straightforward in that way. There have been great strides in the past, especially past decade, where the efficiency of the units at very low outside temperatures has increased tremendously, such that they can heat a home well below zero, when it's well below zero outside, at very good efficiency.
Well, yes, Andrea.
I was just going to add that there are also really great incentives right now. So Jim touched on the policy and how, in general, the context for adding some of these technologies has changed. So this year there are great incentives. There's $10,000 off a heat pump through the state Mass Save program. There's incentives through the federal tax incentives, like 30% off the cost of solar. So there are a lot of really great incentives that folks can tap into, and the coaches are also equipped with all the information on the incentives that a resident might be able to take advantage of.
Absolutely. So let me break it down a little bit further and be one of the residents, say, asking a question. For the benefit of everybody who wants to learn about this process. To start, what are heat pumps? Anybody just?
So heat pumps are everywhere and have been. So your refrigerator is a heat pump. It pumps heat from inside the box to outside the box. An air conditioner is a heat pump. A dehumidifier is a heat pump. So all those things are heat pumps. The key thing that we're talking about here usually are heat pumps used to heat and cool your house. And what they've gotten, as I was saying earlier, what they've gotten better at in the past 10 years is to being operated in both ways at great efficiency. Down south, they've had heat pumps for a long time, and they work actually really well down to about 30 degrees. Below that, resistance heating kicks in and they get more expensive to operate, but it doesn't get that cold down south very often. The big deal now is that they operate at full capacity. The ones we get up here operate at full capacity down to 13 below zero, or sometimes even colder. It's amazing to me that the refrigerant in them boils at 25 degrees below zero.
Wow. And going again, bringing it further down, what other elements of a household do you coach people on that fall under the category of electrifying a home, in addition to heat pumps?
Well, sure. Well, first of all, we're only to be giving advice where people want advice. So one of the first questions we ask is, what are your goals? Are you trying to, simply save money on your energy bills? Are you trying to reduce your climate impact? So we're willing to coach for whatever goals people have. But when we think about fossil fuel use in a house, the main thing is the heating of the house, but there is also the stoves, gas stoves versus electric stove versus these modern induction stoves, and there's the clothes dryer, which could be gas or electric, and there are now even heat pump dryers, and hot water, domestic hot water.
Well, and I want to, I guess at this point, just bring in another element of a household, which is cars. When we look at emissions, or the biggest emitters is transportation. That's the category. So what do you look out for, and how do you support, or what do you tell residents who want to electrify cars?
Well, we can tell them about the electric vehicles that are available now and the rebates that are available. We can tell them about home chargers and what that might take to install. We also tell them about the electric vehicle chargers that are available in Acton.
All right.
One of the key things that's changing here is the abundance of, or lack of, fast chargers for cars, and that's actively changing. There have been news reports that where several actually American manufacturers are all coming under one standard, which will make the fast chargers much more available. But any kind of EV is an excellent car for use in eastern Massachusetts, right? You can charge it at home or charge it maybe where you work, and it's always full when you get done charging, and you can run around eastern Massachusetts. And other cars that support fast charging and where you can get fast chargers, they can be used on a trip like a gasoline car.
And since you have two titles, like select board members, but also coaches, what is it that you can, or can you speak to renters who don't have charging stations on their dense housing units, and what are the goals and visions for that in our town?
Well, I would say that there are two things. One is we are actively working on plans to increase the availabilities of chargers where people live in apartments or other multifamily dwellings. That process does take a long time because it means changing rules of some kind, like zoning rules or other rules, and then it takes time for them to get there. But that's already beginning to happen, and we're seeing more and more chargers available in some places. And in other cases, if people have the ability to charge where they work, or have a car that can do fast charging, it can be used even with minimal charging at home.
Jim, did you want to add anything to that?
I think David's got it.
And then when we get back to the coaching itself, how long is this program going to be? And is there a time limit to it? And if so?
There is no time limit. I mean, we have 8,000 buildings in Acton, so we got a lot of work to do. We have the first 8 coaches trained, and they're working, but we hope to train more coaches so that we can continue to, bring these ideas forward and help people.
Right, and of course, I would like to advocate off the camera. I had already mentioned my concern. There were no women among the coaches,
Yeah.
So I'd like to advocate to get some women so that those who are comfortable. Women who are comfortable talking to just women can be able to access the coaching services.
Yeah.
I will say that there are women like myself and a few others from Energize Acton who are supporting the coaches. And so on the back end, we're supporting with promoting the coaches, making sure everything is working out for them and that they feel supported, and making sure that the infrastructure works internally for the coaches. So there are some women, they're just not pictured in the actual website itself, so they're not the actual coaches. But we definitely do encourage women to apply when there is the next coaching round, to solicit new applications. So that's a good call out,
And
Vivian.
we need.
Do you
them
want
at
to
the
apply?
front line. We need to. Well, I haven't had the experience of having the services that you're providing, so
Right.
I can't speak to them. But yeah, in addition to having a woman at the front, we'd also need some more diversity in other ways, so that we can really, the diverse community can have accessibility to people that they are comfortable with, that may be comfortable with. But other than that, is there anything that I haven't really touched on regarding your coaching program? Yeah.
Well, I would also mention solar. Since we're talking a lot about electrification and electricity, there's a question about where that electricity comes from. And nowadays, if a house can support it, structurally, and if there's enough sunlight coming in, solar is a wonderful way to reduce the cost of electricity, and to have all that electricity be generated without the use of fossil fuels. So we're ready to coach people on solar. We're also ready to coach them on other ways of bringing electricity in that is greener, like Acton's Acton Power Choice program, which has more renewable energy in it than the regular electricity supply that comes in from Eversource.
Which just brings a question to my mind. What are some of the challenges you come across as coaches in this very relatively new field or new vision that you have for this town?
Well, I think you've mentioned one of them, which is bringing more coaches in and more diverse coaches in. So I guess I would make a pitch that we are looking for people who are willing to learn. So I got to go through an 8-hour training spread out over a number of weeks with Abode Energy Management of Concord, and they taught us everything we needed to know. So we don't need people who are already PhDs or something, although we do have some PhD coaches. It's a willingness to learn and a willingness to work with people and talk with them. And Abode and Andrea are available as backups if we often encounter questions that we can't answer, and we have a team behind us to help get us answers.
The other thing that in the actual coaching itself that can be challenging is that each home is different in a retrofit situation. Having an all-electric new home is very straightforward these days. In fact, it costs less than building a home with a boiler or other burning of fossil fuels. But retrofitting a home is a challenge because every home is different, right? They're built differently originally, and they've had a different history, and people use them differently. Jim mentioned earlier that we go in and talk to people about their goals. We try to figure out how they use the house, where they spend their time. Do they need a little bit more heat in this part of the house because that's where they all live after dinner, or whatever their situation is, and that also kind of states the reason for the coaching program, because it's hard to just go and say, I want to add a heat pump. It's not so simple as that. It's how should we add heat pumps to your house?
Right. And which again brings another question. When it comes to doing the actual retrofitting, we need the manual labor or the human resource to do it. So what is the market like for trained contractors who can do the retrofitting versus the demand at this point?
I've seen every HVAC company in the area has begun to take on this work. Some have taken it on for a long time. Some are new to the market. So there is a high demand for these people, so we see that there are more and more people entering this field every day.
Okay.
Abode keeps a list of which any person at Acton can get to, of a curated list of contractors that will come to Acton to install heat pumps of various kinds. Because of a lot of this work going on right now, these people are busy, but there are contractors available.
All right, that's good to know, because there is wanting a project and having the capacity to get it running, two different things. So it's exciting to know that the two are matching. So with that, is there anything that we haven't talked about this program that you would like to tell our viewers?
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I have one thing, because you were asking earlier about other things we coach them on. One of the things that I talk about a lot is insulation, and that is even worthwhile. Even if someone is not quite ready to convert to electricity, you can get an energy audit or energy assessment for free. And not only is it free, they usually bring stuff like LED light bulbs or shower heads that reduce hot water usage or other things when they come. And they'll look at your current insulation. They'll look at the current how tight your house is for air sealing, and make recommendations. And if they recommend work, that work is highly subsidized by Mass Save. So for example, they might recommend, say, a $2,000 insulation project. 3/4 of that is covered by Mass Save. And the remainder, actually, you can get a payback in some cases, like if you heat with oil, in 1 year. So a $2,000 insulation project costs the homeowner $500, and you may use $500 less worth of oil in the first year.
So what happens in the case of a renter needing the service, but then they have to consult with the homeowner, and if the homeowner doesn't really want to do it?
Right, so there's a mix of challenges there. So there are some things that renters can do on their own just to reduce their energy use.
Right.
But you're right, some of those big upgrades are the responsibility of the owner. And we're very happy to talk to owners, to work with them, to talk to condo boards, to try to help explain the advantages of making these changes.
Yeah.
And actually, that's why now Mass Save, although it only applies to renters who live in a home that's 4 units or less, but renters can get 100% free insulation through Mass Save for that very reason. That's why they did it, is because the incentive might not be there for the owner, but it is for the renter because they are the ones who save the energy. But because it's free, there's almost no conflict there between the renter and the homeowner, because it's sort of a no-brainer. This is 100% free, and it's a win-win.
Well, so what if somebody wants an energy coach?
Yeah,
what do they do?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So you can visit Abode. We'll include the link right here to the Acton page on Abode, and you can see all the profiles of the various coaches, and then click to request a coach. And then what I wanted to say was I wanted to give you a sense of what a coaching session might actually look like.
Okay.
And it really can look like however the resident wants it to look, and whatever the resident feels that they need. So it could be as simple as an email question, or a phone call, or it can be something a lot more intensive, like a visit from the coach in your home.
Or a coffee?
A coffee as well. I'm sure the coaches
I
are
will
happy
accept
for coffee.
Yeah.
So, and the whole point is that it's really geared to whatever the needs are. And then the coaches are also there for hand-holding if that's what you need, because some people really just need help throughout the process. Like you said, there's a lot of technical terms. Sometimes it can be a really confusing process, and sometimes really overwhelming process to electrify your home or get solar, or even decide whether or not to get an electric vehicle and what kind of electric vehicle, lease or buy. So that there's lots of questions along the way. So coaches are there to handhold as much as a resident wants it.
Right. And maybe a question, it's not necessarily for the coaches, but maybe I'll put you a little bit on the spot as a town. What mechanisms do you have in place to protect renters from like poor wiring, for lack of a better word, that costs renters? And if you haven't thought about it, I would like to just urge you to consider ways that you can protect renters from shoddy work, I guess, for lack of a better word, that really affects their costs.
Well, one of the things that's common in Acton is that some apartments have resistance electric heat, which costs a lot in the winter. It's not shoddy, it's just was inexpensive originally to install and expensive to run. And so in the cold months, they're hit with very high electric bills. And we don't have perfect solutions for that right now. As Jim said, we can work with the building owner to try to get more modern systems in that cost the tenants less. Also, there are technological solutions up and coming. There was recently a kind of heat pump that won a design award in New York City, which is easy to retrofit into apartments. So that's not quite available yet, but they're up and coming things.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your time. I think we've exhausted anything, and if we haven't, what's the best way to contact you?
If you want to request a coach, you could follow the link that we shared earlier, and we're sharing again right now. You can also email, if you'd like to speak to the Sustainability Office, you can email sustainability@actonma.gov, and we've included that email here as well.
And when you click on that coaching link, one of the coaches will be assigned and we'll get back to you. So.
Are there instances where one coach maybe gets so many requests and has to redelegate some of the work?
So we have someone that coordinates the whole list to make sure that things are balanced.
Okay.
So.
Excellent.
And you don't have to choose one of us. You can just leave that entry blank, and one of the coaches will be assigned.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you again for spending time to come here to educate us about the coaching program. Thank you for all the work that you do for our town and for, the environment. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vivian.
Thank you,
Bye.
Vivian.
And to our viewers, thank you for watching this section of Acton in Focus. Till next time.